If you desire change, if you want to change yourself in a physical way that doesn't make you a bad person, that doesn't make you a shallow person, but how about if you want to change yourself not only for the physical benefit, but because of the mental benefits that come along with that?
Let's link up with Krysta on the FYX. She's a wellness coach with a focus on mental well-being and physical strength.
Hey, FYX listeners, welcome back to our latest episode of the FYX podcast. I'm your host, Krysta Huber. It is officially 2025, first episode of the new year. I hope you guys are ready. I'm recording this transparently still in 2024. So I'm saying hello to you from 2024. But I'm thinking about different things that the Fitness FYX wants to prioritize in 2025. If you caught my solo episode that I did last week to wrap up 2024 and think about the new year ahead, I spent a good portion of the first intro, the few minutes of the episode, really diving into this idea of just reprioritizing where our health falls in line with all of our things on our to-do list, and just really reminding you that it needs to be at the top. That's not an ask, it's a necessity from the experience that I've had as somebody who has really prioritized their health to also somebody who has really deprioritized it. I feel very confident to speak on this subject that whenever I talk to clients and whenever I think through things I wish I've done differently in my life, I'm not a person to operate from a place of having regrets, but something I will always tell people that when I look back on my own health journey, the times when I felt like I just didn't have it in me to get to the gym consistently, to really think about my food choices, to pre-plan my meals, were actually the times that I should have leaned into it the most. Because in reality, it would have made me feel better. And I just didn't recognize it then because my motivation and my drive for wanting to achieve certain things, honestly, was really a lot more surface level then. I was in my early 20s when I first got into tracking my food. And I didn't necessarily have that tie-in to recognizing that when I looked better, I therefore felt better. I brought a different energy, a different mindset, a different outlook to everything that I was doing in my life. And eventually, I let that get to a place of where I was operating from a place of what felt a lot more extreme with my food intake, such that when other things in my life didn't go the way I expected them to, relationships, work, my career path, I was like, why do I need to worry about my macros inside of all of this? And if I could go back and tell that version of Krysta one thing, I would tell her, worrying about your macros, it's not about the macros. It's just about the structure. It's about you keeping promises to yourself. And therefore, that's going to help the way you see yourself and help your mindset that will then just allow you to navigate these more difficult situations, because you'll simply have proof that you can be consistent with something when everything else in your life feels a bit chaotic, or when everything else in your life feels beyond your control or feels uncertain. But the second half of what I've been thinking through and wanting to bring to 2025 is more opinions for all of you. And in reflecting on my own social media strategy and really thinking about trends and other content creators, social media experts, what a lot of people are talking about as a trend for 2025 is just really being more opinionated in your content, but in a way that's going to allow you to both stand out and is true to you. And I don't think that's necessarily a new trend. It's something that has always existed just because of the premise of, hey, there's a lot of people online. If you want to stand out, you have to stand for something, right? And I do feel that I stand for many things. But in thinking about the podcast, sometimes I feel like I hold back on all of you a little bit, in the sense that I want these to sound, of course, very professional and polished. But I was analyzing my own behaviors of podcasts I listen to often, asking friends the type of podcasts they listen to often, and then also looking at the content that really resonates well on my own Instagram. And I've noticed the general theme is that it feels a lot like you and I are kind of having a conversation back and forth, as if, let's say, we were on FaceTime or on the phone together as two friends. So I want to bring that little bit of flair to the fix for 2025, especially with my solo episodes, and just make more commentary on things I'm seeing online. And I also arrived at this thought because in the last few weeks, I've just had a different lens on how I'm looking at what's meant to be comedic content, like memes. If you follow me on Instagram, you know I love to make memes. But I've been thinking more about the influence that memes have, especially when it comes to how you think about your fitness, nutrition, and prioritizing you. And I've come across a couple that I think a few years ago I wouldn't have put so much stock in. But now, as I continue to see so many women in particular feel very affected by being a people pleaser, feeling burnt out, not thinking that they have enough hours in the day to be able to prioritize what they want to do, both their, responsibilities of being a parent, an employee, a partner, but then also taking care of themselves physically, mentally, and emotionally. There are just so many jokes running around on Instagram and TikTok and all the different platforms about you trying to be everything to everyone. That's actually normalizing it. And I think that's a big problem. So I want to unpack that. And I also want to unpack a headline that I saw in the news mid-December. So again, I'm recording this a few weeks ahead so that we can enjoy the holidays, and you guys will be hearing this the first week of January. But there was a particular headline about some new positions that would be a part of the government in California that really got my attention, and they are related to health. But first, we're going to start with the memes. So to backtrack a little bit, I was scrolling Instagram one night looking for some content ideas, and something I've been doing for the purpose of wanting to share more of my hot take, if you will, on certain trends I'm seeing, was looking at different reels. And this one from an account that, again, is meant to be funny jumped out at me. And I wanted to look for things that I could do like a commentary on. And this one immediately got my attention because of a specific word choice. So if you want to go back to my Instagram and you want to look at the reel itself, you totally can. But I felt like it was important to do a podcast episode to be able to expand on this, because there are multiple sides to this. There are multiple perspectives to this. And I want to honor that. And I want to be very clear that everything I'm about to say, that just because I feel this way doesn't mean it's the only opinion that's valid. I simply want to start a conversation to ask questions. And I really want to hear from you, the listener, what you think about this, if you've thought about this before, or if maybe in your mind it's not necessarily that deep. So like I said, I'm scrolling through looking for content that is pretty opinionated that I can react to. And I found this clip that was from a comedian, and it was reposted on another account. And basically the gist of the clip was talking about why it's not a good idea to weigh yourself. And the part that was pretty funny was this person said that weighing herself basically reminded her of being in an airport and weighing your bag and putting it on the scale when you go to do a checked bag and then potentially having to pay extra for it. And her argument was, why should she weigh herself? She's a human being. She's not a piece of luggage. I think that's great. I think that is a totally fair stance to take. But the next statement she made really rubbed me the wrong way. And I just couldn't sit there and not say something about it. So I commented on the post, and I also made a reel in response to it. So the exact phrasing that she said was, because she's a human being who has self-respect. And that's why she doesn't weigh herself. I take major issue with the word choice of self-respect. Now, before I unpack that, I want to say this to my previous points about trends on social media, being real, being raw, being honest, giving your opinion, standing for something, where I think this has become a double-edged sword for so many of us, and naturally explains why figuring out how to lose weight feels confusing, why figuring out how to lose weight feels hard, why figuring out how to maintain your goals can sometimes feel like such an uphill battle. And that's because what gets attention online is and seems to only be what is extremely polarizing. And I think that's so dangerous because when I looked at this post, and I'll actually pull it up because I think this is important. Now, keep in mind, these stats could change because I'm recording this 2 weeks before it actually drops, and people could continue to share this content. But I think the amount of shares that it's gotten is really, really important. So let me see if I can find it. It wasn't posted that many days ago, but this account posts quite a bit. Unless it was not on the account I thought it was, and that's okay. I'm going to find it right from my profile. Well, this is interesting. You guys are getting a live look at me realizing that this post got taken down. So that means my remix of it got taken down too. All the more reason for us to have a podcast episode on it so that it continues to live on. Okay, so either it got taken down because somebody reported it, and I don't know if someone reported what I originally commented on, or they just reported what I posted as my feedback and now it's disappeared. But like I said, now we're going to make it live on here in long form content. So anyways, point being, this post was shared like, I wish I knew the exact number of times because I don't want to speak out of turn, but it got like tens of thousands of likes. I'm sure of that. And I wish I screenshotted it so that I had proof. But this post got tens of thousands of likes. It was saved many times and it was shared an exorbitant amount. And the fact that it was shared is what really rubs me the wrong way, because I just feel like that is clear data and evidence that this is what people relate to and this is what people talk about. When I was going through the comments, there were arguments back and forth saying that, weighing yourself is dangerous. And I don't disagree with that from a mental standpoint. I want to say, and if you've been a listener of the show for a minute, I have had conversations with experts when it comes to the world of eating disorders, of disordered eating. I have heard from clients. I don't have clients who my clients consistently across the board. Not everybody weighs themselves every single day. Some people do it once a week. Some people do it once a month. Personally, I only weigh myself maybe once a week or every other week. And thinking about this post, reading through the comments, I acknowledged the side of potentially getting obsessive with the data. If you have a history of eating disorders, of disordered eating, of a poor relationship with the scale, I do not feel it is a requirement to weigh yourself every single day, once a week, once a month. There are so many people I know personally. I have plenty of anecdotes from people who have told me, hey, I threw the scale out and it's actually been really freeing for me. And in the process, I can tell I've lost weight because my clothes fit differently. If that's you, more power to you. But when I saw the language that was used in this post, the part that I was struggling with was I just wanted to ask a question. I simply wanted to start a conversation. And in starting that conversation, what I wanted to know was, if the argument is that you don't weigh yourself because you have self-respect, I simply wanted to know if the inverse was true. Meaning, if you do weigh yourself, do you lack self-respect? That's it. That's all I wanted to know. Because I think that is ass backwards. If you weigh yourself, all that can mean, and in an ideal world, this is what I wish for it to mean for somebody. If it means something for you where you're defining your self-worth from it, that is a totally separate conversation. And I am going to address that next. But in my world, and for the Fitness Fix clients, the way I like to think about this is as follows. Weighing yourself, no matter how frequently, alongside taking progress pictures, alongside trying on certain clothes, alongside tracking your sleep, your digestion, your hunger cues, your energy levels, the amount of hours you slept, your waist inches, etc., the quality of your sleep. All of those collectively are data points that I refer to as biofeedback. Some of them individually can tell you about certain measures of progress. Collectively, they tell you a whole lot about your health. But when it comes to the self-respect piece, I believe that weighing yourself is a sign of self-respect, because if your reason and your driver for why you weigh yourself is for you to check and measure whether the actions you are taking on a daily basis are getting you closer to your goal, then what is wrong with that? And this is where I think we're living in this world of extremes that really bothers me, because the inverse of this post could be basically sending this underlying message that if you want to change something about you, there's something wrong with you. And I think that is so unfair. If you desire change, if you want to change yourself in a physical way that doesn't make you a bad person, that doesn't make you a shallow person, but how about if you want to change yourself not only for the physical benefit, but because of the mental benefits that come along with that? Everything I just said to start this episode, where had I maintained my routines with my fitness, with my nutrition, with tracking my food during tough times, during difficult transitions earlier in my life, it actually would have continued to give me self-confidence. And one of the activities I would have done as a part of that effort is weighing myself. Yes, these clips are like 90 seconds. Yes, they are the things that get attention because they're funny, but a lot of times things get called funny because they're true, and they're funny because they're relatable. And that's where I think we're in a danger zone, because as I continue to look at this post and look through the comments, I saw a lot of comments about this idea that anything about your weight, where losing weight, like someone straight up said, and I so wish this post was still around because I would have screenshotted this and put it in the video for YouTube. But someone wrote something to the effect of, losing weight is dangerous. We need way more context. Losing weight is dangerous? Of course, if you are at a certain weight to where you continuing to lose weight is causing negative consequences, not just with your relationship with food, but there are a lot of other signs. Brain fog, you can't concentrate, you're barely sleeping, your mental health doesn't feel right, you're starting to notice digestion issues. All the things I mentioned that our clients track inside of the Fitness Fix: hunger cues, digestion, sleep quality, hours slept, all of that is in there, because in my eyes, I want all of those things to be in the green, so to speak. Meaning I want them to look really well and look really good before I even take someone through a journey, aka a calorie deficit, where the scale would in fact begin to go down. So I look at it like we're playing Monopoly. You can't pass go until you've shown me that you've optimized your sleep, your hunger cues, your energy levels, your digestion, and on, because if we optimize those things, naturally we're going to do so through increasing your calories or just being consistent with your calorie intake, but also because that's just putting you in a healthier position to where we don't need to drop your calories as much in order to get to the goal that you want, if in fact your goal is weight loss. And I'm just really disappointed by this idea that we've swung in so many different directions that I think a lot of women feel shame for even desiring to lose X amount of weight. I see this so often when I get on sales calls with potential clients and I ask the question of, do you have a certain amount of weight you'd like to lose? It is rare that I have someone who doesn't try to caveat it or justify it or like package it in this nice little bow. Half the time, more than half the time, 99% of the time, the person's like, oh, well, I know I shouldn't care about the number on the scale. What if we just threw that out? I'm not saying you have to fixate on the number on the scale. Hear me when I say this. There are other measures for progress. I'm going to say it like 3 more times. Transformation pictures can tell you a whole lot. The way your clothes fit can tell you a whole lot, but so can how you feel physically. Like if you feel like you have more energy, even if the scale hasn't moved at all, that's worth celebrating. That's a win. Weighing yourself doesn't equate to thinking that your only goal is weight loss. There's so much that comes with weight loss, not to mention the fact that medically speaking, there are individuals who gaining any additional weight or maintaining their current weight is genuinely dangerous. It's just as dangerous as the person who is sitting there claiming that losing weight is dangerous. It's dangerous on either end of the spectrum. It's dangerous to be overweight. The problem there is like, what are the best standards for being considered overweight? It's very muddy. I don't agree with the concept of BMI. I think it was created off of not enough context and not enough data, not enough understanding about the individual. So I'm not the person who is on board with the doctor's office calling you obese, because I can promise you that I've been told at the doctor's office that I'm obese. And I feel some type of way about this topic because am the person who, when she steps on the scale, you'd never guess my weight relative to what I look like. So I want to just repeat myself on this one aspect of it and saying, I get it. Like, I really do. I get why the scale can mentally mess with your head, but I think it's wrong for people to feel like they're then not allowed to have a goal and they're then not allowed to seek change. They feel shame for wanting to put efforts and put actions in place, have a game plan that is going to allow them to feel better. In a perfect world, that's your motivator. You feeling better is your reason behind the actions. And like I love to say to our Fitness Fix clients, the fat loss piece is almost like the cherry on top. But even then, it's okay to say, hey, I would like to lose 10 pounds. And maybe that number is where people get a little bit stuck because it is sometimes arbitrary. And you're like, do I want to lose 10? Do I want to lose 20? Do I want to lose 40? Or what's really realistic for me? If you're not clear about that, that's a whole reason to have a conversation with a coach like myself. We create that clarity. We give you more certainty. We have data and anecdotes and lots of other client case studies to demonstrate to you, hey, this is what's feasible. This is what would make the most sense for you. And it's all just based on the timeline. But it's just so crazy to me that we've gone from a place that I don't think we ever should have been. I don't want to condone this like skinny movement that unfortunately has come back as a result of people improperly using drugs like GLP-1s. There has been commentary that there's like a whole like kind of like movement in marketing of having that like skinny 90s girl look back. Not a fan of that. I don't identify with that body type. I love being strong. I love having muscle. I want women to feel empowered to have muscle if that's what they desire. But we've taken this too far, in my beliefs, because of the body positivity movement. And I see the body positivity movement as, quite frankly, a cop out and a very convenient excuse for you not taking care of yourself. At least in the most mainstream media uses of the interpretation. I think of not actresses. I think of the faces of body positivity, singers like Lizzo. And I'm sorry, I don't mean this in a way to hurt anyone's feelings. I don't mean this in a way to put anybody down. I'm not saying this from a place of somebody being more than less than. But objectively speaking, there's a certain weight that if you continue to lead a lifestyle at that weight, you are at risk for heart disease, heart attack, other health complications. Like, the list is very, very long. High blood pressure. And I don't even know how you enjoy the quality of your life when you continue to gain weight or maintain a certain size that is not healthy for you. And that's the gray area. It's like, well, what is actually healthy for you? When you're making the face of these movements, the person who is on like the most extreme, one of the most extreme ends of the spectrum, what kind of message are you sending to people? You're allowing people to justify choices that, if we dug deep, if we really asked them to peel back the layers of the onion, if we really asked them to get very clear with themselves about how they feel, about how they see themselves in the world, we would probably find out that they lack confidence. We would probably find out that they don't feel great on a daily basis. But it's like, oh gosh, we can't unpack that conversation. Like, we can't poke that there. We don't want to offend anybody. I think these individuals are actually offending themselves by failing to prioritize something within their health routine. And it doesn't even have to be this other extreme. It doesn't have to mean that you're literally going to go from being X weight to all of a sudden waking up in a month, 2 months, 6 months, even a year, being the person who gets to the gym 4 days a week, is eating at least 150 grams of protein every single day, is limiting their alcohol, is, checking lots of boxes of what a lot of us might consider like basic when it comes to their fitness and nutrition. All I'm saying is, if we know objectively speaking at a certain weight, we can start to predict the likelihood for a person to develop chronic disease. What is so wrong with us saying to them, hey, why don't you walk more? Why don't you start by integrating an extra 10 minutes every single day? Hey, how do you feel? Do you feel okay physically? How do you feel mentally? Why are we so afraid to unpack these conversations? Why are we so afraid to just question if this person is truly happy? And if they swear up and down that they're truly happy, you do you. But at the same time, come talk to me in 5 years, 10 years, when maybe that individual's life is potentially threatened to be shorter because of the decisions they made or lack thereof decisions to take care of themselves, to go for the walk. You don't need to weigh yourself when people reach certain weights. You don't need to weigh yourself to recognize that, hey, there's a possibility that it might be in my best interest for my longevity to lose weight, because you start having difficulty with very standard everyday activities. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that being like the bare minimum of when we would encourage somebody to make change. But what I think is even worse is that why are people even allowed to get to that point? It's from lack of education. It's from what access we have to certain foods in our food supply. It's from the fact that when you look at just economically and from socioeconomics, when you look at the way certain government programs create a bias towards technically, and I'm putting this in quotes for everybody listening, unhealthy foods, that it's not necessarily a surprise that some individuals wind up waking up at some point and being like, how did this happen to me? But how much better would we all be if we just started changing that narrative? I'm not saying that turning around and trying to tell everybody to eat more chicken, it's not as simple as that. And I don't want to boil it down to that. But I do have a lot of questions when I hear certain people speaking about issues with our policies, speaking about issues with looking at food stamps and different programs like that, and showing that things like Coke are more easily accessible inside of those programs, or technically pushed. And that is a whole nother can of worms to get into the concept of big food, of big pharma, and how all this is connected. And if you want to follow one thing, you follow the money, and you get a lot of answers. And I don't need to go down that rabbit hole. But what I do want to say by highlighting this is that the content that's being pushed as being funny on social media is just as much at fault in this whole narrative as is what certain policies may be in place that have been in place for years and years. And if we continue to share this content, if we continue to comment on it and thank people for saying those things, or send it to our friends and be like, LOL, this is so true, then are we technically a part of the problem too? I'm going to show you one more post, or I'll describe it to you because it's actually still up, given that I'm recording this the day that I found it. And this is a similar sentiment. It doesn't have anything to do with your actual weight, but it does have to do with burnout, feeling overworked, not getting enough sleep. And it's a picture of a little girl who looks like she got a bunch of dirt on her face. Her hair's kind of messy. She's wearing a tiara and she's in like a princess dress. And this is being posted in the couple days before everyone tends to go off on break for Hanukkah, Christmas, New Year's, etc. And it says, this is who you're expecting to work a full day when all she's had for breakfast is an advent calendar, chocolate, and a questionable amount of coffee. Once again, I posted this on my stories and I asked people, I said, does this make you feel some kind of way? A lot of people said the end of the year burnout is very real for them. Others voted in my response of, is it Friday yet? I can't wait to sign off. And the lowest number of votes, it only got one vote, somebody saying they were energized thinking about this new year that we're now in. And I went onto my stories to say, I used to not pay so much attention to the negative side effects of content like that. But the more I see them shared, and since we can pull up the data on this one, let's do it. So on December 17th, 2024, I guarantee this will go up. This post was liked over 72,195 times. And I can't see how many times it was shared because it's not a reel. And it had nearly 100 comments. That means that people identify with this. Why is it okay for women to get the message? Oh yeah, it's cool. Like, I'm just going to eat a little piece of chocolate from my advent calendar and lots of coffee and call that breakfast. Where's that coming from? It's coming from putting so many other things on your to-do list ahead of you. Your most important person to take care of is you. And the wild part about it is that if you took better care of you, if you just had a few plans in place, it doesn't even need to be anything crazy. It could be as simple as you spending 20 minutes before you go to bed at night thinking about what you're going to have for breakfast. If you're not somebody who makes eggs in the morning because you don't like them or because you don't have time, where's your smoothie? Where's your protein shake? Where is your Greek yogurt with some fruit? If you're somebody who's like, well, I don't really have an appetite in the morning, okay, fine. But does that mean that you need to eat chocolate? Because if you don't have an appetite, then why should you be eating anything, right? I'm feeling sassy with this one, you guys, but I'm also just looking to be as genuine as I can, because if this was one of my clients coming to me with the type of behavior where week after week, she was not really eating breakfast, but then logging lots of coffee, or telling me that she wasn't sleeping well, or telling me that she was being pretty reactive with her food choices, I'd spell it out for her and say, okay, you can continue down that path, but here are the potential consequences. First and foremost, you're just making it harder for yourself to lose weight, if that is her goal. But more importantly, you're reinforcing the story for yourself that you actually don't deserve to put yourself first, because you got to get this work done. All you're looking for is a break. And maybe the better conversation for us to have, the conversation that I'm willing to have with you as a coach, is what can we do to really rewrite that story, to change this narrative for you to where you almost are repulsed or like very much repelled by that photo, because you don't want to be that person anymore, because you're like, it is not in alignment with my higher self. The future version of me who's already lost the weight, who feels confident in no matter what pair of jeans she slips on, the version of me who can walk into a meeting and feel like she can actually concentrate, the version of me who feels like they're a very present parent. She's not the one eating the chocolate and having a bunch of coffee. Does it happen from time to time? Of course. Nothing needs to be perfect in order for you to feel your best 6 out of 7 days a week, but that shouldn't be your norm. So talking about that is what's going to help us really allow people to make permanent change. And notice that in the last like 45 seconds of me explaining that, I didn't really say anything about macros, because it's not actually about the macros. That's just one tool. That's just one method you might explore for creating some sort of consistency, creating some sort of routine, and just creating a framework for you to actually be able to be committed to being consistent to something, because we know you're really busy, because we know your default is for you to be very reactive with your choices. Now, the third area that I alluded to at the beginning of this recording, where I'm seeing this come up, and I don't tend to talk about news articles, but I was listening to another podcast and this really caught my attention. And I felt like I had to come on and talk about it on the podcast. I'm going to read this to you. I just Googled it and got this right from Yahoo News. I'm not really concerned about the actual news source itself, because I know this is a official appointment and that's all you really need to know. And then we're going to talk about what this means. And again, prefacing this just like I did the first comment about wherever you land on weighing yourself, I don't think that you have to agree with me And I'd love to hear your side if you disagree. I'm going to play devil's advocate for my opinion, or I'm going to play devil's advocate against my opinion as I record the rest of this. So just know that, like, I want to bring this up to have a conversation, not to be like, you have to think the same exact way that I do. I think it's important for us to be curious and to invite people into having these conversations so that we can understand all sides. So here's the headline. I Googled this, and like I said, I'm just pulling this up from Yahoo News, but it looks like the original article itself was on Fox News. Also from December 17th. San Francisco Health Department hires a, quote, fat positivity expert to consult on, quote, weight stigma and neutrality. I'm going to read you like the first two sentences. The San Francisco Department of Public Health has hired a self-described, quote unquote, anti-weight-based discrimination expert to consult on, quote, weight stigma and weight neutrality. Virgi Tovar, the author of You Have the Right to Remain Fat, that's the name of a book this individual wrote, and other published works on fat positivity and body acceptance, announced on her Instagram Monday. So this would have been on like the 13th, or sorry, the 15th, that she was hired to consult for the department, calling the collaboration an absolute dream come true. Now, I do want to jump down to this one thing just to give a little more description as to who this person is. Tovar's website lists her as a plus-size Latina author, lecturer, and leading expert on weight-based discrimination and body positivity with over a decade of experience. She is a contributor to Forbes, where she covers stories on the, quote, plus-size market. Her most recent articles include features about hosting a size-inclusive Thanksgiving and alleged fat phobia in current TV shows. It is unclear what role Tovar will play in the department. The San Francisco Department of Public Health did not respond when asked by Fox about the consultancy. Okay, so this is the issue I have with this. These are direct quotes from her website. These are self-described things. Weight stigma versus weight neutrality, two different things in my mind. And I'm not saying there's not a fat phobia in current TV shows. I didn't read the article that she wrote on that. But I don't take issue, as I'm skimming the rest of this article. It does say that Tovar has been so vocal against diet culture and BMI metrics on her social media platforms. I just said that. I don't agree with BMI. But I don't see why we have a term in our language for the words fat positivity. And the way that I can say this, that is the most objective take I could possibly have on this, is the word fat. It's actually really sad that it has such a negative connotation because, and I don't know the history of it. I don't know where it originated from, but no one uses it in a positive way, of course. Like, when someone calls someone else fat, there's no one saying that that is a nice thing to say. And I think a lot of you who are probably listening to this could relate to you having had that thought about yourself, looking in the mirror and saying, I look so fat. That's not a compliment to yourself. But it's also not something that is necessarily untrue. And what I mean by that is you yourself may have a very unrealistic standard of what you consider fat versus fit versus skinny versus toned. But we got to have some kind of limit on this because of everything I said earlier. The word fat itself could be an objective term if we could just come up with a way to agree upon, maybe not what that looks like, maybe not a certain number, maybe, and I'm just spitballing here, maybe it's based on like certain activities that you could potentially complete. And I don't mean like when you were in gym class in 6th grade and you had to like run the 40-yard dash. I'm talking like really basic things like being able to walk for a certain amount of time, like being able to bend over and tie your shoes without difficulty, being able to go up the stairs without difficulty. It's likely that if you're listening to a fitness focused podcast, you may think about those things and be like, well, of course I can do them. But I'd venture to guess just by looking at some of these individuals, and I'm not trying to make an unfair assumption, but I would guess that they may find some of those activities difficult. And if we could just put some sort of parameters in place that didn't even have to do with the numbers, like if we can all agree that maybe the numbers component is a little bit trickier to navigate because we do have to factor in genetics and just the fact that some people, carry weight differently. Maybe it's looking at like visceral body fat, which is the fat around your organs, because that would most definitely paint a picture for the future of your health into your 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, the likelihood of you developing disease, the likelihood of you being at higher risk for those diseases. But for us to reach a place of like neutrality with our bodies or positivity, I would just make the argument that if we really wanted to get there, couldn't we possibly look at the word fat and just remove the negative connotation from it? Just take it as fact. I heard another podcaster say it this way. When I heard this on that podcast, the individual said something like, why does the word fat have to be mean? Why can't it just be fact? And they also said that as somebody who has been overweight before. So maybe the solution is to stop using the word fat and utilize the word overweight. But I'm really curious, and I'm going to keep an eye on how this consultancy in San Francisco plays out, because I just really want to know what kind of, pieces of information, of events, of conversations are going to be taking place based on this woman's efforts that is really for everyone's best interest, beyond, of course, the immediate of let's stop bullying people, let's stop putting people down. But if we really, really want to help people, like if your true intrinsic desire is to help someone, why wouldn't you want to support them in making it easier for them to start to lead a healthier lifestyle? And that's where this gets tricky, because there's too many nuances of how we've defined the word healthy and calling things good versus bad. I am someone who has been vocal about this before. I don't like to label foods as like this food equals good, this food equals bad. But anytime I tell someone about my food philosophies, I always couch it to say, well, yes, no food is good versus bad. Those are moral labels that we've put on it. We can all agree that objectively speaking, if you had a cupcake or if you had some broccoli, the broccoli is more nutritionally beneficial for you given the micronutrients that are included in it. Yet I could make the argument that the cupcake serves a time and place for celebrations and for people getting together to celebrate somebody, for you to satisfy your sweet tooth, that little dopamine hit in your brain. That serves a purpose. But it's a slippery slope to be like, oh yeah, I'm going to go for the cupcake every single time just because I want to satisfy my sweet tooth because I had a really stressful day. Then the issue, and this is where I feel really confident about the angle I'm trying to take here. If we can really ask people like what's stemming, like why are they choosing to eat a food that eventually, if they eat more of it consistently and that compounds over time, it's going to cause them to see weight gain. When you ask the person, like, what is making you choose this food? It could be a number of different things, but knowing what that why is will actually help us present them with a better solution for them to lead a healthier life. To me, leading a healthier life is not just saying, oh, well, I'm just going to lump myself into this body positivity, this body neutrality, this fat positivity movement and call it a day. Because what if in choosing to do that, you're actually taking years off of your life that you don't deserve to put yourself in this position when it's 2025. We have so much information circulating on the internet. Some of the things I mentioned as ways to take care of your health don't even cost anything. Let's remind everybody that walking is free. And why can't we spread that message even more? Over the summer, I had the opportunity to work with and partner with an awesome organization out of the Ocean County area of New Jersey, in Point Pleasant in particular, with my friends over at the Lift Gym as well. And the organization is called The Ocean is Female. And we put on an event to help middle school aged girls, and even some as young as elementary school too, start to have conversations about food. And not to scare them. Start to have conversations about food so that ultimately they can be 15, 16, 20, 25, 35, 40, not in the position that so many of us women in those age ranges today have gotten to, and at that point have tried countless diets. And that was a project really important to me to work on, and something I feel like I haven't even scratched the surface yet, and will be a focus for the Fitness Fix long term. Because if we can help women, if we can help young girls get to the root of understanding, of really actually educating them. It always blew my mind that we had health class in school, and yet we didn't have any conversations. Like, maybe we talked about the food pyramid, but I don't even remember doing so. And I can tell you that's not what sparked my desire to want to pursue a career and build a business inside of the space of fitness and nutrition, because I can barely remember it. And the food pyramid in and of itself, like as just a nutritional concept to follow, is something that we could probably tear apart and restructure anyways. So why not? Why are we going to pour potential taxpayer dollars into this body positivity movement when we could really be doing is taking initiative to help people, to make it easier for people by giving them more information, by giving them more tools to lead healthier lives in a way that's just simpler, in a way that doesn't feel restrictive, in a way that doesn't give them the message that they need to have a certain amount of money, that they need to be, following these 17 different instructions every single day. And if they fall off, then they're not going to get the results that they want. I just don't get that. I really feel like we're doing people a disservice here, because then it can become a crutch. And it's like, at what point might you regret that actually being a crutch? And I'm going to wrap this up by saying that whether you step on the scale, whether you subscribe to the body positivity movement, this still comes down to the fact that we just live in this time of extremes. And I'd really like to start making the voices dead in the middle be a lot louder, because that's where I feel that I am. As somebody who doesn't love the number they see on the scale all the time, who physically doesn't necessarily match that number on the scale, I'm not one to be like, oh, we need to weigh ourselves every day because that's the only way we're going to allow ourselves to get the results that we want to get. But I'm also not somebody who's going to tell myself or convince myself that, oh, because I know I tend to be a person whose weight skews higher, I'm simply only going to focus on how I look and feel. No, because I know that at other points in my life, I've been different weights. Maybe I don't want to get back to the lowest low, but there's a range in there. And there are other health components that I could dig into a little bit further, that I could understand, that I can focus on, that I can improve, that I can optimize to help me find that middle ground where I not only feel really good in most of the outfits I put on, where I not only feel really strong in the gym, where I also just genuinely feel great about the way I move through the world. And that's what I want for you too. So I mean it when I say it. I would love feedback on this. I don't need you to agree with me. I want you to challenge me. We could do a follow-up episode on this, but I do plan, as we move through this new year, to deliver more content like this, where I'm looking at things on social, in the news, and giving you my takes on them. So I hope you guys are excited for it, because I'm fired up. With that, from wherever you're listening from, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. I kind of feel like with the tone of this episode, I might need to change that closing line, but it's my go-to. So I'll see you guys next week.